I am Jeff, and this is paint. Paint is liquid vision. It's mud, and we smear it and brush it and blend it and spray it, and all of a sudden it turns into pictures. It's totally magical. There's nothing else like it on Earth. It is probably one of the most ancient human technologies. It's been around for a minimum of 50,000 years and probably even 200,000 years. We were probably using paint before we were able to control fire. This is Cerulean Blue. This is acrylic paint. I only started using acrylic about 5 years ago. It was only maybe a decade ago that I thought that acrylic had the same amount of saturation and pigment density as oils, but I was fighting oils because I want my paint to dry really matte and I like it to be thick, and that is like the opposite of what oil paint does. So I was adding a lot of wax into the oil paint, and it was only after I was taking paintings off of stretchers and rolling them up that I realized the paint was all cracking. So I took a look at acrylic and I saw that modern acrylics really had massive pigment loads. And so I started working with it. The problem though is still the shininess of the paint. So I had to figure out a way to make the paint really matte because I like it really matte and dull. So here I've got some matte medium, and what I'm gonna add to it to make sure that this gets even more dull, because matte medium still has a little bit of a sheen to it, I'm gonna add some marble dust. Look, here's the giant palette knife making an appearance. So when paint dries, and see, I can add like a massive amount. When paint dries, it makes a film across the top. So the light comes down and it bounces off of it. And if the film is super smooth and makes shiny paint, if we get something in there that breaks up the smoothness on a microscopic level, the paint bounces around more on the surface and it is not as shiny. So that's one thing the marble dust accomplishes. And the other thing that the marble dust does is it bulks the matte medium. So it makes it more pasty and makes it more similar to the thickness of the paint itself. And with modern paints, they're so packed with pigment that you can extend them with a mixture like this by about half and half. So you could do a 50-50 ratio of a matte medium mixture with the actual paint. The other thing you can use is diatomaceous earth, and that's silicate. Marble is actually limestone that has been subjected to intense heat and pressure, and so it essentially is a calcium crystal. The disadvantage of diatomaceous earth is it absorbs the liquid in the acrylic, and so you have to make like this paste out of water before you blend it in to the paint, otherwise it clumps up. So the marble dust I can mix right into it. And you see, as I'm getting this dust, the marble dust, distributed more and more completely, this is getting smoother and smoother. And I'm not too worried about that little bit of dust right there that's on the side. I obviously caught some of this cerulean blue in here. So this matte medium is already tinged blue. So the other thing is all paints are transparent to at least some degree. The marble dust or calcium carbonate helps them a little bit in terms of making them more opaque. What really helps is even tiny amounts of titanium white, because titanium is really opaque. So especially with colors like yellows that are all really, really transparent, just a tiny amount of titanium white will help those out quite a bit. So this is mixed enough, and as I'm mixing the whole pile of paint, it'll get mixed down even further. So you can see how that really smoothed out. So I'm going to start to build kind of a teal out of this. So this Cerulean blue is the warmer blue. The cooler blue is like an ultramarine blue. And we'll actually use a little bit of that in a few minutes to give some depth. This is pretty well mixed. Any of the little rough spots you see in there still, they're actually tiny bubbles from the mixing. All the powder is totally mixed in. I'm going to add some Bismuth Vanadate yellow. This is a new pigment, and I use it to replace lemon yellow. So this is a super crispy, super light yellow. It's relatively opaque as it is. I just love how clean it feels. And I want to mix all of my paint all the way, so there's no more streaks of color in it. And I always do that before I add the next mixture. So we went pretty far on this into the green zone, and I'm going to start to pull that back. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to bring in some of that Ultramarine Blue. And this is going to give it a bit of depth. I always make really giant piles of paint. It's like the worst thing ever to be making a giant painting and run out of color, and you can almost never exactly replicate the color that you've mixed. So it's good to always end up with extra. Gather up things here. So you can see how this got deeper than the previous mixture there. All right, now I'm going to bring this back in the blue direction to get towards that teal. So I'm coming back with the Cerulean blue. So we've got in the mix the Cerulean, we've got the yellow, and we've got the ultramarine. And I can really see these in this mixture. So I'm going to bring in quite a bit more of the Cerulean. So again, you can see where we came from with that limier green. I think we'll push it even further. It's always a back and forth. There's times that I'll spend more time mixing the exact color I want than I'll spend on actually applying it to a painting. Because I want to get the exact color that I'm after. More bluer, more paint. Look at the size of this pile we're starting up here. Really getting into the teal zone. Just a little more. You see all those bubbles we saw earlier are really getting worked out too. I like to lay it out like this so I can look at it from different angles and see the flat part of the mass tone of the paint. So I can see how the light's hitting it differently. I've got a lot of peaks and valleys. I'm seeing a lot of high spots that are hitting the light and low spots that are in shadow. There's some left on my knife. All right, now I'm going to bring in some titanium white so I can boost this up in brightness and tint it a little bit, and again add to that opacity. I use this color so much. I like this next to a cadmium orange. There's a ton of opposition there, and they really reinforce each other. It's just dreamy. I mean, how can you say That's not magical.